Okay, let's get right into this. How we communicate and connect these days have changed dramatically in the last 3 decades since the Columbian published its first section on Forecasters Panel. We added this breakfast in 1995. I remember when there were only 35 people in the audience. Times have changed. We connect by publishing a newspaper 7 days a week, delivered right to your door. And we connect 24/7 to you, our readers, the community, and sometimes to the world through our website, www.columbian.com, along with Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms. In many ways, the Columbian had to adapt and evolve to the Internet of Things. This morning, we are all going to discover how we are all connected to the Internet of Everything. I'm proud to say that you're attending one of the largest economic forecast events in the region, and it's made possible through the generous support of our presenting sponsor, Riverview, for the 6th consecutive year. So thank you, Riverview. Every year, the Columbian encourages high school and college students to attend this event. Berger ABAM is the sponsor of the student participation part of the program. Students were given complimentary seats today. Founded in 1951 in Federal Way, Washington, Berger ABAM is a consulting firm in the areas of planning, civil and structural engineering, environmental services, public involvement, construction management, surveying, and underwater inspection services. They are part of a global group with offices throughout the U.S. and in 50 countries. Regionally, they have offices in Seattle, Federal Way, Portland, and here in Vancouver, where Helen Devery leads a talented team of professionals. Helen, would you please stand? And thank you, Helen, for supporting opportunities such as this one so these students can prepare for their future. The management group, better known as TMG Northwest, has been a sponsor of our economic forecast for over 10 years. Carmen Villarma founded TMG, a full-service real estate management company, in 1985. Today, TMG is a family of 5 companies providing property management services for apartments, community associations, and single-family homes. TMG's corporate headquarters is located in Vancouver with branches in Portland, Oregon, Kennewick, Washington, and soon their newest office in Bend. TMG's success is anchored in innovation and reputation, dedication to its clients, and market diversity. As the recognized property management leader in the Pacific Northwest, TMG's commitment to our community has helped support many charities and causes through their philanthropic arm, TMG Cares. Thank you, Carmen, and will you please stand? Again this year, the sponsor for the CVTV video recording of our program this morning is Peace Health. For more than 125 years, Peace Health has been a leader in promoting personal and community health throughout the Pacific Northwest. Peace Health is Clark County's largest employer with more than 4,000 caregivers in the hospital, urgent care, labs, medical offices, home care, hospice, and systems headquarters in East Vancouver. As a $2.4 billion health system serving Washington, Oregon, and Alaska, Peace Health continues to build on its legacy of finding innovative health solutions to meet the needs of the community and empower and enable the well-being of neighbors in times of health and in times of need. Will the Peace Health directors and member of their foundation and community health board please stand? In addition, we received generous in-kind support from the Columbia River Economic Development Council and the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce. So let's give them a round of applause too. Find your copy of the special section that we provided on your seats as you arrived. If you take a look at the inside cover, You will see the program lineup on the inside of the cover. The special section contains essays by our panelists. For the general public, this publication will also be inserted in Sunday's newspaper. As we begin the program, you're invited to submit a written question for the panel. There are pens and question cards on each table. Simply fill it out, hold them up, and the CRED staff will collect them from you and give them to our moderator. And by the way, a special shout out to Mike Bomar, president of CREDC, and his team for recruiting our panelists today. CREDC has an extensive network, so thank you very much, Mike and company. Thanks. Now I'd like to introduce our presenting sponsor. Based on the results of the last four Best of Clark County surveys, if you had to name one bank, it would probably be Riverview Community Bank. Serving Clark County for going on 95 years, Riverview is the only bank headquartered in Clark County. They have a long, proud history of community investment and employee involvement. Riverview and its employee owners support more than 150 local organizations that promote a vast array of community causes. And if you had to name one banker in the county, it would probably be Kim Capilotto. He's been an extremely visible part of the community for almost 20 years, serving on numerous boards and committees, including Identity Clark County, Junior Achievement, the Historic Trust, and the Humane Society. He led the chamber for a couple of exciting years and has emceed literally hundreds of nonprofit events. He also happens to be Executive Vice President and Chief Banking Officer for Riverview. And Kim, if you thought we were going to skip mentioning it's your birthday today, wrong! Wishing you a very happy birthday, my friend.
Hey, thanks for coming to my birthday party. This is the single best attendance I've ever had at one of my birthday functions, so I appreciate it. And you all paid. Suckers. Hey, listen, I just want to say we're very excited to be involved, as we have been over the last several years with this economic forecast breakfast. We have been involved when the news has not been as rosy. And we are involved up to today, and it is, we have great attendance here today, and I think some of that is because the news, where's Scott Bailey? Sorry, no offense, so don't screw this up for me. Most of the news is very positive today, and I think that that is one of the things that we all want to be able to bask in the glory. We worked very, very hard in this community to get this, this community and all of our individual organizations and us as individuals to where we are today. We're not done, and we're not there, but we're getting better every single day. A couple of things. I just want to do a couple of very quick shout-outs. I have with me today a senior from Hawkinson High School, Carson Moffett, is sitting here, and he is shadowing me today for the day, so I'd like to publicly apologize to his parents for anything bad that he picks up. I would like to also blame all of you if he does pick anything up that's bad, maybe McDonough, or there's a variety of folks in this group that could be held accountable for that. So, but Carson, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. How many of you, just a quick show of hands, are involved in nonprofits, service organizations, educational foundations of any kind? How many of you are involved in those, whether you are on the board or support or donate? I mean, that's incredible. Reality is that those organizations count on organizations like Riverview and others in this group, and each of us individually, to make sure that that they can continue to thrive and that they can continue to service their client base. And so it is important that we make sure that we support organizations like mine and like yours that help contribute to these organizations in our community and region to make sure that they are able to continue to help every single one of us move up in this life as we continue to lead it. So for us, it's very important. That's how we are able to do that, is from the support of each of you in our communities. So we have, I mean, banking is pretty simple, and I think I've explained this once before, but basically we buy money and we sell money. That's really what we do. We're like a supermarket for cash. We buy money in the form of your deposits, which we would love to have in case you didn't catch this. And then we turn around and we lend it out. we pay you a certain amount for your deposits, no comments please, and then we lend it out at a higher rate, again, no comments please. The issue is that what we don't do as a community bank is hammer you on fees and everything else. It doesn't mean that everything's free, but we make sure that we're not gouging you. Almost no bank makes money on its fees. They all make money on commercial lending combined with fees. But reality is the fee portion is a very small portion of income for a financial institution, specifically for a community bank. So that makes a huge difference to us, and that's why if any of you, how many of you either individually or, and don't worry, I won't take your names, but how many of you individually or through your companies are planning on doing some type of expansion or borrowing money or anything this year? Just a quick show of hands. Some of you don't want to raise your hands because you think we'll call you later today, but we won't. Reality is I have a barrage of branch managers and commercial lenders and consumer lenders up here that would love to speak with you. So if you have any business that you're thinking about doing this year, give us a shot at it. It allows us to continue to make sure that we support organizations. It allows us to continue to sponsor events like this, and it really makes a huge difference in our local communities. So remember that when you're making your choices. It's what we do. It's how we think of it every single day, is how can we make the community where we are and help support the folks that support us? How can we help that continue to thrive every single day? So again, thanks for allowing us, Jody, to be involved again this year. It's awesome. We love doing it, and we're proud to be part of this community. With that, I am going to introduce our moderator this year, and Mei Wu is our moderator, and she comes back to us this year, and she was actually one of the panelists that we had last year, and I'm sure that you remember her. She's a wickedly smart woman, and when she speaks, pay attention, because you're going to get some nuggets of wisdom. She's coming up here to quiet me down, but you're going to get some nuggets of wisdom that you otherwise might not be able to get. So. May is a managing director of SmartRG Inc., which is a telecommunications software and hardware company, offers a suite of solutions to simplify home internet ecosystems for service providers. She's also an executive in the software industry, an advisor to startups, ambassador for the Oregon Angel Fund, an investor in several other venture capital funds, and she also serves on the board of the CREDC and WSU Vancouver. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mei Wu.
Is this on? Great. Good morning. Thank you, Ken, for the introduction, and thank you to Jody Campbell and Scott Campbell and Company of the Columbian for having me serve as the moderator for this year's Economic Forecast Breakfast. We have a wonderful panel today to talk about the Internet of Everything. However, before we get started with the panelists, I want to just take a minute and define the Internet of Everything. As my mother would ask me, what the heck is IOE? Anybody else have that question? So let me define that for a second. The Internet of Everything is really an intelligent connection between people, processes, data, and things. More often than not, you might hear of the term IoT, which is the Internet of Things. There are such things like this Fitbit. Does anybody else have one of these? Early adopters? Okay, so back to the Fitbit example. If you put that in perspective for the Internet of Things, again, it's an intelligent connection of people, that's me, processes, where my heart rate and steps get shoved up into the internet cloud, data, where I have my iPhone app, and I can see, hey, did I get my 10,000 steps today? And things, Fitbit. So that is really the Internet of Everything. So on that note, what is amazing is really the proliferation of the Internet of Things. I think today we have something like 7 billion connected devices already. And actually, from the research firm, the Gartner Group, based out of Connecticut, they estimate that there'll be anywhere from 21 billion to 37 billion connected devices for the Internet of Things. And that's just one example. You'll hear examples from Cisco and Company that estimates the Internet of Things connected devices to 50 billion, for example. So 26 billion, 50 billion, what's 25 billion? A lot of data connections. Furthermore, what's interesting, though, is that Gartner Group estimates that by 2020, the Internet of Things technologies will be in 95% of electronics for new product design. Think about that, 95%. And you're already seeing that today. I mean, some of you might have Alexa at home. At my house, disclaimer, my husband works for HP. We have 15 printers. They're all reporting up to the internet, telling how much ink we used and when we're out of ink. And by the way, it triggers automatically and sends instant ink to our house, all without me doing anything. So know that in the future, it's coming. If anything can be connected, it will be connected. So on that note, we have a great panel today to talk about the Internet of Everything. Oh, and by the way, some of you might be asking, well, why the heck would we want so many connected devices? You know, my mother raised 3 kids. We grew up just fine, I think. And my grandmother certainly didn't have anything to do with the internet, let alone anything with an on and off switch. Remember, the Internet of Things is a device that has an on and off switch that connects to the internet. So on that note, I'd like to bring our panelists up to stage. And I'll have them come up at this time. We have 4 wonderful local leaders that will talk about the Internet of Things, the value that it brings to us, what that means, the impact to the community, and how we in Clark County can embrace and prepare for the Internet of Things. So I'll have them come up on stage, and I'll introduce them one by one. So on that note, just a few things, housekeeping things. What we'll do is we'll spend the first 15 minutes introducing the panelists and allowing them to introduce their companies and provide some opening statements. We'll then spend 45 minutes and have a question and answer session in regards to general questions as well as individual questions for their company. And then lastly, we'll take 30 minutes for questions and answers. And as you guys see on your table, you have these little question cards that Jody mentioned. Please, if you have a question, complete that and get it over to the tables of the CREDC, which is Mike Bulmer, and his staff is standing right there. They might come around and help collect, but if not, you can walk your way through. And Mike and his staff will help screen the questions for content and relevancy for today's topic. So, ready to get started? All right. Okay, the first panelist I'd like to introduce is Aaron Holm of Blockable. And we chose Aaron because his company produces things for housing and related to technology, and it also revolves around the Internet of Everything. So Aaron is the CEO of Blockable, a company he founded in 2016 with a mission to make well-designed housing accessible and affordable for consumers, cities, and developers by completely reimagining the materials, supply chain, and process of traditional construction. By treating developments and houses like products instead of projects, the company aims to reduce waste in construction, bring housing to markets that need it more quickly, and give architects and general contractors the ability to build and scale more efficiently, all while delivering a beautiful and more modern home. Let's welcome Aaron. And Aaron, I think we're going to do each introduction as we go. So you want to take a minute and talk about your company?
Sure.
And I think you have your mic, great.
Oh, do I do? Is it on? Hello? So yeah, we started Blockable at the end of 2015, mostly around the complexity of building housing. And so our mission is to make housing attainable and affordable for everyone. You've got a pretty huge housing crisis on the west coast of the U.S. I think there's about half a million homeless people between Washington and Oregon and California. And one of the main reasons is it's very expensive and time-consuming to build. And so, you know, we thought, what if we built a product that could simplify the entire process and make it so that we could deliver housing to those who need it most? And so we work with a lot of nonprofits. We're building projects in Seattle, Auburn, Washington, Vancouver, Washington, East Palo Alto. And we generally work with nonprofits who have become developers over time but never really intended to be. So their goal is to provide housing for people. There's very little affordable housing in the market right now, and so nonprofits are trying to work with various communities to try and solve that problem. And over the course of time, they've become developers, and so they're not necessarily experienced at it. So what we want to do is basically remove the complexity and time and waste of building. And so we have a 50,000 square foot manufacturing plant here in Vancouver where we build housing product. So the first product, it's a 260 square foot modular housing unit that's really beautifully designed that we manufacture in our plant. We ship it to site on a truck, we crane it in, plug it in, and it's immediately ready to go and livable. And we also have a full software platform that runs the entire building unit that measures fire life safety events, water leaks, it measures temperature, it measures electrical usage, water quality, air quality. So it gives a full reporting dashboard back to the people who are running the community so that they can measure the performance of the housing that they're building. So our task right now is, there's more demand than we can keep up with, so we're sort of heads down on production right here in Vancouver, and so that's what we're up to.
Great, thank you. Did you have a slide or a video?
There was a slide and there was a little video they were going to play. This was an interview that we did with Q13 Fox on the news in Seattle, so if we let this run, it probably gives a good overview of what we're doing.
So you imagine in the microblock, it's about another 100 square feet, so it's larger than this. And so,
in order to understand his vision for affordable housing, you have to talk about Aaron Holmes' past.
I grew up sort of single mom, and I grew up in sort of lower income housing for sure. And we shared, it was a tight space, and so I grew up sort of understanding the housing challenges.
Holmes saw the housing challenges here as a manager at Amazon, and he thought technology could solve this. That's when Blockable was born.
I just became convinced that it was time to build a product that could sort of change the supply and demand curves, which are going in opposite directions right now.
Blockable homes are not converted shipping containers. Instead, each unit is built at their factory in Vancouver, Washington, with steel frames strong enough to survive earthquakes.
The lighting, so we used a sort of recessed lighting plan.
And design elements like recessed lighting and smart home technology.
The only demo I do is I shut the door.
Okay.
And then it's quiet.
After one is built, it can be shipped anywhere within 1,000 miles of the factory.
So it comes out of our factory, it's been inspected by the state, it drops onto a foundation, connects to utilities, and it's immediately livable.
Blockable is also responsible for the permitting, which traditionally can be very time-consuming. He says permits have been approved in parts of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and California. Holmes says each Blockable unit also is about 170 to 260 square feet.
So a 260 square foot Blockable unit, our target is we're hitting $200 per square foot, so we can build units for $65,000.
Blockable homes are not sold individually like mobile homes. Holmes sells to developers instead who want to address the housing crisis to groups who really need it.
Medium to low to no income people, and it's everything from nonprofits who are working with veterans or seniors or people experiencing homelessness, all the way to affordable housing for individuals who are coming out of college or teachers or firefighters.
For Home, it's about disrupting the residential construction industry, making homes in a matter of weeks instead of years.
So rather than relying on site-built labor to get the market and supply that we need, we can leverage the way we've built planes and cars for the last 20 years and really start to think about manufacturing as a way to create supply.
No matter what school you root for, there's no rival.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron. So the next panelist I'd like to introduce is Dorota Schertel of Simplexity, and we chose Dorota because her company is involved in product development and engineering as it relates to many things in the Internet of Everything world. So Dorota is the CEO of Simplexity Product Development. It's an engineering designing firm specializing in the design of hardware such as IoT devices, wearables, smart products, 3D printers, and biotech equipment. Simplexity has been chosen by some of the world's most advanced technology companies as their engineering development partner, including HP right here in Vancouver, Microsoft, and Illumina. Simplexity has offices in Vancouver as well as San Diego, San Francisco Bay Area, and Seattle. And in 2017, Simplexity was selected by Inc. magazine as one of the best workplaces in America. So let's welcome Dorota.
And I also have a video that'll give you a little bit of background about the company, so why don't we start with that?
To bring a mechatronic product to market, there's so many aspects to deal with.
It's a risky process. You have a great idea and you're trying to make a manufacturable product out of that.
You have to drive all the cost out of the system that you can. And getting that wrong can mean the difference between success and failure in the product. What we do at Simplexity is we solve problems for customers.
We eat and breathe and sleep engineering. We understand the engineering behind what clients need to do. We're in this because products are things that people interact with every day.
So to get to work on something like the CPR loop is really great, something that is used directly to train people in CPR so they can go out and save lives.
That's why we're in this business. We love to make people's lives better through the products that we design. We're able to take the complexity of product development and really boil it down to something simple, something that works well and that creates a wonderful result for our clients. And that's really what Simplexity is all about. To give a little bit more background information, May mentioned her Fitbit. So one of the products you saw in that video was the Microsoft Band, which is a competitor product to the Fitbit. So we did the mechanical engineering and design behind that product. And then other products that we've worked on, you saw part of a 3D printer. That's a new matter 3D printer, so that's more of a consumer education-based printer. And we did all the electronics, all the firmware, all the controls, and that product's also connected. It's an IoT device. It has an app that goes with it. So any type of product that needs to be designed that has this electromechanical components in it, that's where our expertise is. So companies like HP, like the Microsoft, sometimes the smaller companies hire us, and we have a team of about 75 or so engineers these days across the 4 offices that help design those products.
Great, thank you, Dorota. So I'm going to skip one because the audiovisual guys have these things queued up. So I'm going to go to Andy Lowry of RealWear. And we chose Andy Lowry because of his company's involvement in the next industrial revolution, sometimes associated as you've heard, AR and VR. So Andy is the co-founder and CEO of RealWear, the makers of the first industrial head-mounted tablet. Right there. He served on the forefront of engineering and operational management in some of the world's most demanding industrial, defense, and manufacturing environments, making him an authority on the application of technology in industry. So prior to RealWear, Andy held the position of chief engineer for Raytheon's electric warfare systems business, where under his leadership, he's won the U.S. Navy's next generation jammer competition, a program worth an estimated $8 billion. So Andy, welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so good introduction, and basically what we have here is a industrial ruggedized computer that I'm wearing on my head, and I control this computer with my voice. So some of the differences between the way we control systems and some of the new systems like Alexa and these other that are coming out is that we have to be very noise robust. So we can control the system with our voice in persistent 100 decibel environments, And what we do is we containerize Android 6.0, so that's why I call this a tablet, a head-mounted tablet, because it runs on an Android 6.0 operating system. And over the top of it, we put our operating system, which allows us to control the system not with hand gestures or swipes, but with your voice. And what you find is in industry, as we're transitioning more and more to kind of the electronic age, people are taking old manuals and paper and pencils and put them on these handheld tablets. And what we found in doing kind of years of study in the area is that obviously having two hands occupied to achieve information isn't always ideal. You have a lot of industrial workplaces that you're climbing up poles, you're servicing generators, and you have to have your hands free to hold on to tools or to keep yourself safe by holding yourself up. So a system like this can improve productivity. We have found it can improve, obviously, safety because you don't have anything in your hands kind of encumbering you. And other than that, the simplicity of it is fairly elegant because, like I said at the beginning, it's a tablet, a fully intact Android tablet. So I have a small video good marketing video that'll pump us up here and talk a little bit about use cases and how it's worked. So.
Today's workers need the best tools to do their job. Safer, faster, smarter. Luckily, every worker already has the best tools. A pair of hands. Today's industrial workers juggle lots of devices. Yet, out there on the job, sometimes they need a third hand to hold a flashlight, manuals, some tools. RealWear aims to free your hands with the world's first completely hands-free Android tablet. Head-mounted with plenty of room to use with a safety helmet and glasses. With both hands free, it's just a safer, faster, and smarter way to get the job done. Designed for the most demanding of industrial environments, rugged enough for military use. Use simple voice commands, even in loud industrial environments. With hands-free, real-time collaboration, remote experts can see what the field worker sees. Solve problems, prevent mistakes, coach a worker through a new procedure, and record it for training videos. The results and cost savings speak for themselves. The RealWear HMT1. Free your hands.
Thank you, Andy. And last, we'll save the best for last, I have Kevin Getch of Web4. And we chose Kevin based on what his company does in helping organizations make a marketing impact in our digital age, and especially within the Internet of Everything. So Kevin is the founder and director of digital strategy for Web4. He started his career in marketing over 15 years ago and has been quoted and published on leading sites like Forbes, Huntington Post, Search Engine Journal, and Mashable. Kevin serves as the president of the board of directors for Search Engine Marketing PDX, a nonprofit organization focusing on connecting and educating people in the digital marketing community. And he also serves as the vice chairman of the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce and is a recipient of the Vancouver Business Journal's prestigious Accomplished and Under 40 Award. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Hello. All right. So I work more in the people and data layer of the Internet of Everything. Our company basically partners with businesses to help them solve one of their biggest challenges, right? Which is how to grow and actually connect with all the people that are using all these things in this constantly changing digital landscape. It's changing so quickly, and all the time we're looking at how do we stay on top of the latest technologies. And we do this more than just creating beautiful websites that display on everything from your watch to your phone to your fridge, right? We do this by developing a comprehensive digital strategy that allows you to connect with your customer in all of these points throughout their journey, whether that be search engines to social media. And with the constant growing of digital assistants and technology like that, we're looking at how can we position you to take advantage of this next wave in evolution. So clients we tend to work with are looking to grow. We look for the clients we choose to partner with have similar values, right? They're someone we can have a major impact with, and at the end of the day, they know that it's going to take hard work, and they're willing to partner with us to make that happen. So that's what we do. We do everything from the website design and development, mobile-friendly website design and development, search engine optimization, all the way to social media. So thank you.
Great. Did you have a slide?
There was just a couple slides that could have been going while we're talking. That's some of my team right there. We have an amazing team right here in downtown Vancouver on Main Street, across from Kiggins Theater. And yeah, we are proud we won the Vancouver Business Journal's Best in Business for marketing and web design companies for the 2nd year in a row. So we're extremely happy about that as well.
Great. Thank you for those wonderful introductions. So now we'll start by asking the panelists some general questions, and then also I have some specific questions for each of them as regards to their relevant industry. So let's get started. The first question I have for everyone here on the panel is related to talent and workforce development, since that seems to be top of mind for, I'd say, most of the people here in the room. In the articles that you guys have written, and those are right on your table there, most of you guys have indicated that we're going to need to change the way that people work, or people need to change the way in which they work to make your products. So the question is, how do you see the Internet of Everything impacting our community and education system in Clark County and beyond? I mean, does our future workforce need new types of degrees, new soft skills, or is there something else? Who would like to go first?
I mean, I've seen one thing in our plant for sure, which is just the need for technical fluency. So I think we have builders and we have people who work in our environment, and there's really no job where you can't be basically functional and fluent using technology. So I don't see any role that we have where it's not going to be required that people sort of understand how they're going to integrate their job into different systems that we're running. So the notion that there is really kind of any position that is not integrated with the technology that we run as a company, I think that's just needs to be baked into sort of everybody who's coming through the system. So everybody needs to have at least a basic fluency in technology, and to understand that, I mean, if you look at some of the tools that people are building up here, I mean, even people on the floor and on the line are going to be using technology to help them with their jobs, and so it's going to be it's going to be second nature, whether it's using their voice or using, you know, computers or using other types of gestures or different types of inputs. It's just going to be fundamental to everybody's job going forward, I think.
I was going to say, I was recently looking at a study of the top 5 skills that are interested now that we're all looking for, everything from problem-solving skills to leadership and people management, but what was going to change in the future. And I think one of the things that I found really interesting, it was a term something along the lines of mental flexibility, because everything is changing so quickly and we have to adapt. And so the people that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to be able to, one of my favorite oxymorons is anticipatory retaliation. So they're going to be able to anticipate what's coming and make plans to educate themselves to keep up with the workplace, because the rate at which everything is changing is going to be very quick, and we need to be flexible in our thinking and adapt. But in addition to that flexibility, I think you'll see a heightened value put on people, soft skills, people management, anything that requires a little bit more empathy and relationship type skills will increase in value, while things that are less interactions will be automated to some extent. So.
And I'd like to maybe address that from an engineering standpoint as well. So I'm a mechanical engineer, trained as a mechanical engineer, master's degree in that. And we hire engineers traditionally of different disciplines: electrical engineering, firmware, software, mechanical. But really what we hire more of now than we did, say, 20 years ago are more of those cross-disciplinary engineers. So looking at engineers that are not just siloed in their disciplines, but that have, mechanical engineers that have programming experience, or programmers that understand hardware. Because when you design an IoT device, and actually not just IoT devices, but anything these days, it's so connected that you have to have that understanding of the whole picture, whereas before you could kind of stay in your little silo and be successful. These days in our education system, I think is going in that direction, but I think there's still a lot to be done to integrate those disciplines. And then not just those disciplines. I mean, you do need the communication side. You do need to know how to write and communicate. So it's more of an integrated approach to education, and I think that the people that are trained that way will be successful in the new workplace.
Yeah, I might just add one other thing, which is we see, creative problem solving needs to be really directly tied with all of those skills. Because we tell pretty much everybody in every role, to look out for opportunities to automate themselves out of repeated tasks. And so if there are things that they're doing that really aren't the best use of their time, that technology can be applied for, they should be identifying those opportunities. And that's a sort of creative problem. We're in this period of time, I think, now where we're basically, we're going to be telling the machines what to do for the next little while, not sure how long. But that's the opportunity over the next while, is people understanding how we need to use systems to create better processes. And so I think in the same way that I think everybody in our company needs to have technical fluency, they also need to all have enough creative problem solving to be able to identify opportunities to implement technology to make improvements.
Thank you. And how about you, Aaron? How do you see the Internet of Everything impacting our community and education system?
Andy, yeah, it's okay. So I'll go really big picture here for a second. And so one of the definitions of this Internet of Everything is sort of the end of the beginning of the information age. So think about that for a second. And a history professor, a very famous history professor, told me that the hallmark of that is the distribution of computing power. So distributing computers to your wrist, to your head, to the refrigerator. You're distributing computational power out there in sort of the space. And the reason why that's important is that we right now are with a generation, the millennial generation, that's the first generation that doesn't remember a time before the internet, doesn't remember a time before the Internet of Things or the information age. And they're coming out into the workforce, they're going into college, and we really haven't changed fundamentally across the United States how we educate, how we engage with industry, and how government supports this new information age. And there was a call to arms book called America's Moment, written by this same history professor, Philip Zelikow, who states, if we don't take a concerted effort from education to industry and bind together, we're going to miss an opportunity to be a global leader in the information age as it begins to expand. So specifically, what I would say is I had a young lady in the Midwest who was in a vocational track in high school. It's a very heartwarming story, actually, that she wasn't a very good student, and she was in high school, and she would go into the mechanical classes and learn how to do auto shop and fix an engine, but she wasn't engaged. Well, one of my folks that work with me had brought in an HMT1 to this high school and gave them not only the systems with the applications, but the back end, the computers that push those applications onto a system like this. And about a week goes by and he comes back and the principal has got tears welling up in his eyes saying, we have this young lady who hasn't done one thing in automotive class or any of this, but you brought this system with your software kit to help load applications onto it, and she has gone crazy. She's brought the system home, she works all night, her parents say she can't get off the computer, and she's lit up like an unbelievable star. And I took away from that something very fundamental, just like Philip Zelikow said, just like this idea of the millennials coming up into the workforce. We have to adapt. We have to adapt our educational systems all the way down into grade school and high school. And that's going on in some of these, quote, bubble communities at the very high end. But fundamentally, throughout our country, we have to adapt. We have to create courses that are more specific to technology areas. And then we have to understand that the millennials that we're teaching are nothing like the previous generations. The gap is fundamentally much more severe between how they view the universe and how Generation X and beyond and boomers view the universe, because we were industrial age children, not information age children. And you have a hard enough time going between the generations when you don't have such a fundamental switch in the way we approach and the way we operate and the way we kind of live our lives. So I think, yes, education is very important, and it's very important that we do aggressively adapt to what we're seeing and what's emerging and what's going on if America's going to stay sort of in the pole position in the world in this dawning age. So.
I was just going to add to that I think it is critical, and I think I love what I see in the Vancouver local community between the CRDC, the Chamber, the City of Vancouver, and the educational systems really working on career-connected learning and growing that and focusing on that. I think we need to do a lot more, but it is going to take a concerted effort between our educational institutions, business, and government to all work together to make this happen and to do it in a way that is supporting that rapid growth. And I think you hit it spot on. So,
Cheers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree, and I think we need to even bring it down to the preschool level, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There's games that teach you how to program, board games that teach you how to program now, that kids at 5 years old are learning terminology to help them be programmers as they get older.
Yes, yes. So thank you for answering the general question. Now what I like to do is go to some specific questions per each panelist as its regard in their industry. So the first person I'd like to ask some questions to is Aaron of Blockable for his space in housing and technology. So Aaron, we are experiencing a housing crisis in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. And you mentioned that we should think of housing as a technology to become the ultimate technology product, and that your microblock is the solution. So what may that look like for the future for our communities and developers alike?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is basically take a lot of complexity and confusion out of the process of building housing. So it's the famous quote, you know, people don't want quarter-inch drill bits, they want quarter-inch holes, right? So it's the same idea with delivering housing. Nobody wants a complicated, expensive, over time, over budget construction project. That's not people's goal. Most people's goal, particularly people who want to, you know, try and fix some of the fundamental issues with the housing market, is to deliver housing. And so if you look at a lot of the people who are trying to do that, you have, you know, communities, governments, developers, nonprofits. So you have this constituency of people who are trying to find ways to build housing, but there's a lot of complexity in the marketplace. And so if you want to go build a community, you have to go through a series of processes that are very complicated and opaque and difficult to navigate. And so the concept of developing a product is basically to pull apart all of those dependencies and say, well, what if we could build the product and manufacture it and deliver it to the site and have it sort of plug and play, which changes a lot of the elements. So what we want to be able to do is to go to people who are providing housing for people coming out of homelessness, for people, for veterans who can't find housing, for people who have mental health issues, for people who are just in the workforce who can't afford housing, and say, we can deliver the entire solution and do it in a very different way. So it's the idea of identifying people who want to build communities and want to build housing and then solving the problem for them, rather than trying to sort of chip away at the existing structures, be they, you know, the cost of materials or the cost of land. These are sort of fundamentals that are put in place. But by changing the process, we can change the availability of housing. So that's the fundamental issue behind it. So what we can do is we can bring the whole stack to the market. We can bring the product, which is a really high quality housing product, and then we can bring the development, we can bring the finance, we can bring all of the entire stack and actually solve the problem for the customer. And so we're treating it like a sort of traditional product development business, where you look at, you know, what is the product that we want to build and how do we solve the whole problem for the customer. But we're doing it in a, you know, the intention at the beginning with this company is I think we can build a very successful wealth creation company that also solves a very important societal problem. And it goes back to the question we were asking before, which is, we can build all kinds of technology, we can build all kinds of things people are capable. The question is, what should we build? What's worth spending time on? What is it that we should be applying all of this technical capability to? What are the problems that we should be working on? And that to me is a fundamental issue. If we want to teach children about technology, teach them about empathy, teach them about building things that matter and building things that'll make the world a better place. So, we think if we can bring a product to market that can solve a fundamental problem and break apart a very difficult challenge for people who genuinely want to bring housing to market, I think that's something worth doing.
And Aaron, you also wrote about shifting our focus from a construction challenge to a manufacturing challenge. So if you can elaborate that for the audience and also indicate why you chose Vancouver to be your manufacturing headquarters.
Yeah, well, if you look at one of the things that sticks out to anybody who kind of works in the modular building industry is, if you look in the last 20 years, manufacturing productivity in the U.S. has doubled. And so the efficiency of our workforce and the ability to consistently increase productivity in manufacturing over the last 20 years has doubled. The construction industry is flat and going down. And so there's no specific efficiency or productivity gains being made in that industry. And the corollary is, if you imagine that you're going to build a car and you're going to have all the parts shipped to your driveway, and then you're going to hire a team of people who are going to come to your driveway and then completely build that car. I mean, that's a $20 million car, probably, by the time you're done. So productizing has inherent benefits, but you need to be able to standardize. And so that's why we kind of picked the market that we picked and sort of focused on that problem, because you need to be able to have repeatability in your process to get the efficiencies of scale in manufacturing. So shifting it to a manufacturing problem is all about timing. And so the reason I started Blockable when I did was because I saw these converging technology trends. One was advanced materials. So there's incredible materials out there now that we can work with. We can 3D print metals, we can 3D print carbon fiber. All these materials that you would use to rethink how you build housing are now mature. Manufacturing techniques, the use of robotics, the use of advanced techniques, we can really build fast, and we can build at a high level of quality. So that made now the right time to kind of bring housing into the manufacturing realm. And it's also something that, in this area, there are people who are very good at manufacturing. So we started, we do our software engineering and our industrial design up in Seattle, but we from the beginning have done manufacturing down in this area. There's a really strong base of talent and experience in manufacturing in this region, and a lot of experience with the industries that make sense for how we're building, which are typically aviation and automotive. There's a lot of aviation manufacturing experience, a lot of boating manufacturing experience in this area, and those lend well to our system, which is a steel frame housing construction model. And so there's a lot of steel fabrication supply chain. There's a great transportation supply chain. There's a great materials supply chain. And there's a lot of people who know how to build advanced products. And so this is a great region to build housing. People just haven't thought of housing, pardon me, as a manufactured product. But we believe it is, and so Vancouver's a perfect spot for us to build.
Thank you, Aaron. Now I want to turn to Dorota of Simplexity to talk about product development and engineering. So Dorota, your company designs the things in the Internet of Things, which may encompass all kinds of technologies like voice recognition, deep learning. So give us some examples of how these new developments can help us have a better future.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know how many of you have used the Amazon Echo, Alexa, or Siri, or voice recognition before. Yeah, obviously. Here, Andy. So what's gotten interesting with the technology is you have now voice recognition that actually works, right? When this started, decades ago, it was just horrible and it didn't work. And now I'm surprised when I want to write a text, I say it and it gets it right, which is very surprising from something that was horrible and didn't work. And so what this allows you to do is it allows you to eliminate some of the hardware that used to be necessary in these types of products. So you used to have a screen and a user interface, and those take power and those take more batteries. So it's changing the types of devices that you can design now. Same with cameras, right? Your cell phone camera becomes a sensor. So before, you'd have to have all sorts of difficult, complicated algorithms. Now you've got all this data that's being analyzed that's got this deep learning. So for example, let's say, those of you that remember the help, I've fallen, I can't get up medical alert bracelet, that was in the 80s. All right, that was very limited, right? You basically talk to the bracelet and say, help, I've fallen. But these days, you can have so much more sophisticated of a system. So let's say you have an aging parent who, still lives independently at home, and you're worried about them. You now have a ability to have technology that doesn't just say someone's fallen, but can see who it is, can see the severity of it, has biometrics and sensors that can say, okay, how severe is this? Should I send you a text automatically? Or you know what, this is serious, I'm going to immediately notify the paramedics and they're going to come over even when you're not home or you're traveling on business. So the potential for this technology to really impact lives is huge. So you can save people that in the past, because of isolation or other issues, were not able to be saved. There's also fun applications. So let's say you've got a pet at home and they're bored and you don't want to let them out the doggy door because you're afraid something else is going to come in. I mean, you can have an RFID tag so the doggy door only opens when it's your pet and doesn't let the raccoon in. You can have the cameras that will recognize your pet so they don't even have to have an RFID tag. So the technology is only really limited by your imagination. I mean, I dream of the time when I'm coming home and I can just voice command my kitchen to start cooking dinner for me. So by the time I get there, everything's prepped. That's not there yet, but it will. Right now, the devices are giving us information. The way the devices are going is instead of giving you information, they're going to do stuff, that motion, that action. And that's what's really exciting.
I can't wait for that automatic cooking thing too. So,
and laundry too.
Yeah,
there is a Laundroid application though, and I think Annie just came back from CES. I don't know if you saw the Laundroid, but there is an automatic folding laundry machine being developed for like $20,000. Not my price range yet, but it's coming.
The fun one was the Kohler robotic toilet that made all the news. So if you want to look up something funny that made a lot of infamous press, I guess, was the robotic toilet. They had posters everywhere with robots looking at a toilet. And I'm not sure what a robot toilet does, but I'm not sure I want to find out either. But
so those are great examples, Doretta, but what about security? I'm one of the ones that don't have Alexa in the house yet because I don't want maybe somebody from the White House listening to my conversations. So what about security? We see headlines like the Intel CPU meltdown and other such things.
Yeah, I mean, security is a concern. It's a big concern, especially when there's emerging technology. So I like to use the parallel of online banking. How many of you now use online banking? Almost all of you. When it first came out, people were terrified. They said, there's no way I'm going to trust my banking information. I'm just going to go to the bank. I'm going to sign my checks. It's safer that way. Because it was, right? But the thing with technology is the products come out faster than the regulations and the security. So now, yeah, you got to be a little bit wary and hesitant. But it's going to catch up. It's bound to catch up because the devices are going to be out there. They're already working on how to create the right regulations. So right now, an electronic device has to have FCC regulations to be out there so it's, there's not noise that's affecting it. These standards are coming out for IoT devices. They're still being developed, and you can develop a product faster than it's catching up, but it will catch up. So there are, and the advantage is that there's so many big companies are working on it, and they have big security teams that are working on it. So yeah, there's in the beginning, it's always the trade-off of security versus technology, and the early adopters are the ones that are willing to take a bit of risk to figure out what's fun and what's cool and how we can advance. And then once it gets more mainstream, the security stuff will catch up, and they're working on it very diligently to get there. So, yeah, I'm very optimistic about the future because, again, we've solved these problems in other areas before, and we can solve it in this area.
Okay, so I'll put Alexa on my list. And before we leave you, Doretta, for specific questions, there's always a question that I have, and that's near and dear to my heart in regards to women in high tech. There's always been an issue with the lack of women in STEM-related fields. You certainly beaten the odds by not only being a woman CEO, but also a woman CEO of an engineering firm. So what can we do locally here in Clark County to encourage more women to get into STEM-related fields?
It's an interesting question. I think about this a lot because I have both a son and a daughter. I think some steps are already being made where there's more, like when I went to, I was in high school, I didn't know what engineering was. So I was encouraged, because I was good at math and physics, and I was encouraged to go into engineering. These days, my kids have opportunities to take these, engineering for kids classes, and there's a lot more programming and so forth. I think there is still a social issue, though, and as much as, my encouragement to all of you who are parents out here, how many of you have children that are at school ages, under 18? So my encouragement is to treat your daughters and your sons equivalent. And that means if they're good at math, it doesn't matter which gender, they should be encouraged. But I think the piece that doesn't get talked about is the opposite, right? So those of you who have sons, teach them how to cook, teach them how to do laundry, teach them how to take care of kids. Because the only way we're really going to have equality in the workplace is if we have equality in the home. So the only reason I can be a CEO and an engineer and successful is because my husband, who is also working and is successful in his career, he does half the stuff at home. It's not just on me. He helped raise the kids. He helps cook dinner. He helps clean. It's a partnership. And until we fix the social stigma of stay-at-home dads and of it being women's work, then we're not going to get there. So we got to do both sides. And so everyone who has kids here, I hope you're treating your kids the same way, not just from education, but and luckily the home tasks are going to get automated. We're talking about those. But until they are, you still got to do them, and no one likes them. So you got to work together.
Thank you. My son's going to be so thrilled when I tell him to do the laundry this weekend. All right, now I'd like to turn to Andy of RealWear to talk about the next industrial revolution. So Andy, I know you found your company in Silicon Valley, but you've chose to relocate to recently the Fort Vancouver Artillery Barracks, which we're all excited about. So what factors did you look at when choosing a headquarters, and why did you choose to land in the Couve?
The Couve. Vantucky, I guess, right?
Or Vansterdam.
Yeah, Vansterdam. Yeah, like you said, very prevalent in the news, and people can read about Silicon Valley. Of course, it is just a renaissance of folks that are there that pull in from all over the world, and so talent and this energy has always been sort of the hallmark of why people went to Silicon Valley. But it started with defense, and it started as a rural area that a guy named Shockley decided to recruit people in from the Midwest in order to start to build this renaissance over time. And it's expanded to the point where it's a little overrun, and the culture is a little disjointed. And the pricing is, I don't even need to tell you. I mean, I need a lot more of your houses in Palo Alto right away so that people can afford to live. And what we found were millennials that would come out of college and move to Silicon Valley and work at the Apples and the Googles. They were 3 or 4 people to a house, and they had a great time, and they would go work at Google or Apple. And then they'd decide they want to get married and have some children, and didn't realize where they would be able to live or where they would be able to go. So we wanted to look at a place that we could build a company, a large hyper-growth company, that would allow people to have a yard and a dog and a child, and in that sort of late 20s, early 30s type of demographic. And so we did a trade study from Seattle. We wanted to stay West Coast so that we would be on the same time zone, so we didn't open it up to all of the US. But we went down the coast, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA, and even kind of considered San Diego, where I used to live when I got out of my active service in the military. And what really happened was we came to Vancouver, and 2 things happened. One, I discovered this artillery barracks, and being 20-year retired Navy officer, of course, it resonated with me because it's like going back to a base again and hearing the F-15s flying overhead coming out of PDX. So I loved that. But then what really resonated was Columbia River Development Committee and the Economic Development Committee. And what those folks did was absolutely unbelievable. And it was funny you said, keep the raccoon out of the doggy door. In LA, we were keeping the criminals out of the doggy door with your RFID. It wasn't raccoons you were worried about. So I thought that was like resonated with me. I'm like, that's one of the reasons why we're in Vancouver, because we're keeping raccoons out and not a bunch of vagabonds, right? So. But CREDC helped us in every way. It felt like the military in their support. They supported our wives to get jobs. They supported us to get into the Fort Vancouver location. And they even went so far as to solicit the governor's office to look at us for a grant, a relocation grant. We received a $200,000 grant to come here to the southwest region of the state of Washington. So from the local committees, the local communities, to the governor's office, to every single person that I've run into, and I'm from the Midwest originally, and so, you know, hospitality is not something you see a lot of in LA and San Francisco. Here, you've got such authenticity, the community, and such great people that we fell literally in love. I mean, literally in love with the community, and so that's why we decided to make the move, and that's why we're in Vancouver. So.
Well, Andy, we're certainly excited to have you here. And another segment-specific question. So you indicate your company is an Industrial Internet of Things company, another acronym, IIoT. As some call it the next industrial revolution, or maybe you hear of it as Industry 4.0. So expand a little bit on that and tell us why your product, the HMT, is attractive to folks like the millennials that you just spoke about.
Sure, yeah. So again, I hinted at that at the general question, but Philip said the beginning of the Industrial Revolution was when we went from steam engine to electricity. So we took powered systems that we were gathering around a steam engine in the late 1800s, and we distributed power fairly close to losslessly with electricity. So that same phenomenon's happening where we have distributed computing that I talked about. And so really the industrial Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, isn't an industrial revolution, it's the information revolution applied to industry. And so what I've seen, and with my children, we talked about a children example. My son, who's now 20, going right here to Clark College, majoring in music. Oh, jeez.
Thank you, Bob Knight.
Somebody doesn't like my son. That's what I say when he comes home most of the time. What are you doing? So
I think it was more of a hoorah.
Yeah, oh, hoorah, okay. Yeah. So yeah, oh, hoorah for Clark College. Yeah. Oh, right, hoorah, yeah. Well, there's a story here that's funny because I was talking to a guy that runs HMT1s with his plumbing company, and he says, all of these young millennials are a bunch of idiots. And I go, idiots? I don't know if they're idiots. And so what do you mean by that? Well, they don't know how to do anything with their hands and this and that. They need to have their cell phones on their pocket. And I said to myself, let me think about this. And I had an example. My son, when he was learning to drive, 16, he would take his cell phone and put the map on and stick it on the dashboard and hold it there. And everywhere he would go, he would just look at that map and look up, look at the map, and that's how he would navigate. And we were one day coming 2 blocks away from our house, and I had forgotten something. I said, Chris, turn around, go back home. I had forgotten something, and I need you to get back. He said, okay, and he gets to his phone, and he types in the thing. I said, Christopher, we're 2 blocks away, man. I'm like, you got to know how to get around. And he's like, oh, yeah, Dad, you know, this and that. And I thought, oh, what an idiot. You know, he can't even 2 blocks away. Well, about I don't know, maybe a year ago, we were in Houston, or I forget where we were together, and I had my GPS up, not knowing the streets or anything like that, and I'm looking at it, is it, they want me on the left lane or the left lane to the right? And how is it happening? And I'm all steered, take a wrong turn. He goes, Dad, what's the matter with you? Why can't you navigate with a GPS phone? You got something wrong with you. And kind of chiding me back a little bit. So think about that fundamentally. We've got a generation that just is like a cyborg or a centaur. They use the computer fundamentally to live their lives. And he never learned 3-4 blocks away from the house. He still uses the phone as an aid, as a thing that he's coupled with. And that's what's so fundamentally different about this generation, that they don't think about the things we do. Memorize the capitals of the states, do this. Why do I need to memorize it? Just hit it, I got the capital 1 second later. So it's very, very fundamental. And now we're taking those generational children that are now adults and young adults, like my son who's 20, my daughter's 19, and they're coming into the workforce. And we're saying, welcome, you've lived your whole life with a walking computer in your left hand. Put that down. Here's some paper. Here's some pencils. Here's a stack of manuals that I want you to read to learn how to run this refinery. And they're literally saying, what the heck? I don't even know how to go. I don't know how to operate in this world. I don't know how to deal with it. And so if we're going to preserve the tacit knowledge in the boomers retiring, if we're going to have fast and effective training methodologies with the millennials as they penetrate, tools like this are not an option. They are a mandatory element of the way those millennials are going to work in industry. So I suggest everybody think about that and maybe apply things to kind of help our new industrial groups and our industrial workers in this nation kind of have the right tools that get them to be successful when they get into the workplace.
Thank you, Andy. I'll admit I rely on my GPS, but I do know 2 blocks around as well. All right, now I want to turn to Kevin Getch of Web4 for marketing impact in our digital age. So Kevin, obviously we have lots of people in this room, businesses, profits, for-profit and nonprofit. They all need to sell to someone. So what kind of advice can you give? Your company helps businesses grow. Given the internet of everything and the impact of things like artificial intelligence and search engine marketing, what kind of advice can you give to our audience to prepare for this?
So, well, first I would say every single business and person in here is unique. So the advice I'm going to give you, I'm going to try to give you a broad advice in general. But it's really something that you should look at and dive deep and really understand your customer. If you understand and love your customer more than anyone else, and you do everything you can to service that customer, you will be prepared for the future. So, but let me give you a little insight into the future. I think the largest, what I call macro trends, I call them the 3 Ps, is personalization, predictive, and proactive. So artificial intelligence is going to continue, and other technologies are going to continue pushing these macro trends forward. We've seen over the last few years personalization of everything we do. I know all of you, when you go look at those boots and then you start seeing the boot ad following you around, everybody see that? They get a little remarketing. That's just the beginning from a personalization standpoint. In the future, the algorithm for like Google is already more vertical aligned to you as an individual than it is just broad in general. It used to be more of like, I'm just searching this query and now I'll show you results with that page. Now search engines are actually looking at you, your search history, and so you can do searches now that you don't necessarily even include what you're searching for. You can just say how tall is it, and if you just searched for the Statue of Liberty, it'll tell you how tall the Statue of Liberty is. In the past, it used to be that it was just looking for those keyword terms, but now it understands everything in context. So we're moving towards more of what we call the next battlefront is assistant. So the next battlefront for companies like Alexa and Siri and Amazon and Google is to be the best personal assistant you've ever had. And if you were going to hire a personal assistant, would you want that personal assistant to only do things when you ask them to and not really know you and know your needs and just sit there and wait? No. You'd want it to be personalized, predicting your needs, and you'd want it to proactively handle those things. So this is where we're heading. We're a few years off, but in the next 3 years, you're going to see major advancements. They're not going to make the same mistake that they made with like Google Glass, where they're pushing things out too fast and making them extremely expensive, and then failing at that. Because they know if they came out right now, a lot of these companies, and they came out like Siri actually has a program codenamed Proactive. Proactive for them is the holy grail of the marketing landscape, because right now a lot of everything you're doing is reactive, meaning that when you go out and do a search, they're waiting for you to input. But in the future, it will be like you had an assistant sitting next to you and they're listening to everything you said, and they can later say, if we have a conversation, I say, hey, on my bucket list is I want to learn how to fly a plane. Later, it can pop up and say, hey, here's some information on learning how to fly a plane, and of course, here's an ad on flying lessons, right? So that is where we're headed, in that direction. And so for you to be prepared now, it's important that you understand your customer. You understand how they utilize different channels. We use the acronym FUD with 2 Ds, not FUD, but FUDD. What are their fears, their uncertainties, their desires, and their decision making? So how do they make decisions? What channels do they utilize to do research? At the end of the day, are they looking for value? All those things. If you understand your customer, then you can create a strategy that specifically targets that customer and leverage technology, but don't leverage technology in such a way that you lose the human connection with your customer. Always make sure you have that human connection with your customer. There's a lot more I could get into from a technical standpoint, but from an individual perspective, each business is a little bit different. Don't just go out there and say, hey, this person's doing this, they said it works, and so now I'm going to do that. Your business is different. Search engines might not be the right place for you to go. If there's no demand for what you're looking for, if there's people not searching for it, you created a brand new product and no one's actually looking for the problem, that's not going to be where you probably want to be, right? You might need to use awareness channels and do different things to create awareness first. But if there's a huge demand for what you're offering, then that's when search engines are a great thing, because people are actually looking for it. So of course you want to be there in that part of the consumer buying process. So that's a little bit. I could keep going on for hours, so I'll have to cut myself off.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm waiting for my personal assistant here shortly. Yes. All right, so our final question will be the same for each panelist. So before we move on to the Q&A session. So if you guys can all take a minute or two and just let the audience know, what do you think will be the biggest disruption or shift in your industry over the next 12 months in 2018? So we can just go right down the road. Why don't we start with you, Andy?
Okay. So I guess it segues very well from this last topic about proactiveness, and you know, I'll just take a little bit of a segue into what you were talking about. There's actually, I don't know how many people know this, but Amazon has a study in their Warehouse 51, which is where they do a lot of their advanced stuff, where if they can get predictively accurate enough to say this person wants this thing, these pair of shoes, this new microwave, whatever, they will deliver packages to your door without you ordering them. And if you want it, you bring it in and you use it and you buy it. And if you don't want it, you leave it on your porch and they come back the next day and pick it up. And if they can get their accuracy above 90%, they're going to start doing that, is what they've said. And they're at about 60% right now, so they're not that far off. So want to talk about proactive, you know, oh, I didn't know, Christmas every day, I didn't know all these things were coming. In my industry, it's the same. We are looking at eliminating what's called unplanned downtime. So this is a little bit more technical than the Amazon example, but an oil refinery out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico generates about $1 million a day in revenue, $1 million a day in revenue. So if you have a pump or a valve that breaks and that oil platform goes down, it takes on average 12 days to get it back up. So they're losing $12 million for an unplanned outage. And so billions of dollars have been spent in AI, in cloud-based systems, to predict failures before the failures happen. And so that is the fundamental sort of push that our industry, and in 18, you're going to see a lot of disruption from ideas of how to make things more reliable by doing maintenance on those things before they break. And I think, you know, it may not be as cool and funny and sexy and stuff like that, but it's fundamental to changing industry and improving the global GDP. And our device obviously fits in at the edge, what you call the edge, where that maintenance is being performed. So the sophistication of the AI and all of this different stuff, it doesn't matter a hill of beans if it sits in the cloud. It never gets down to the people actually doing the maintenance. So a computer like this is your gateway or your key in order to take that information from the cloud, apply it to someone working on a system, and give them the right information to do just that. So that's what I think the big disruption in industry relating to IoT or Industry 4.0 will have in 18.
Great, thank you, Andy. Kevin?
There's no question about it for us that in our industry, artificial intelligence is going to be the biggest driver of change. And if you look back and you had the PC revolution, and then the age of the internet was created, and we've had this kind of mobile revolution, we are now in the AI revolution. And the AI revolution is going to make the industrial revolution look like a blip on the screen. It's going to be extremely fast. It's also going to create so much opportunity. So a lot of times we look at change, like when people looked at the Industrial Revolution and they're in it, they were very scared because there's change, everything, you know, and we're in that same phase right now where we're looking at it going, you know what, it's scary, there's going to be a lot of change, and there is, and we have some right to fear aspects of it because we need to get to a point where we're choosing our direction more with a vision as opposed to letting the technology drive us. We need to have a vision for where it's going, and we need to put all those things in place. So, but from a marketing perspective, AI, you have Google, Amazon, Apple, many of these companies. Google is best positioned from an AI perspective to take advantage of it. Amazon is hiring more AI engineers than anyone in the world right now. They are hiring, and there's not enough people to fill those jobs. So they are hiring like crazy, and they're doing that because they have this foothold with Alexa. They actually have more Alexa devices in homes than Google has smart devices. So they're looking at that as an advantage. Can we get in this play as well and grab part of that market share? Google has a much larger market share from search overall and assistant overall, but that specific product. So AI right now, if you look back at it, Google's been basically, and these search engines have been training to learn natural language processing, right? They've been training their different systems. All the information we put in is just educating them. It's educating their system. So like Google Photos allows you to store all of your photos for free forever, all your videos for free forever. That comes at, the prices are data. They're analyzing all that data. And the other day I was actually going to post and sell this elliptical machine. And by the way, I got a smart scale for Christmas, and that thing is stupid. And I'm selling my elliptical machine, so you know, I mean, that's
telling you way more than you do, right?
Yeah, it's stupid. But I literally, I was like, I know I have a picture of that elliptical machine somewhere, and I went to Google Photos and I searched elliptical. And here's this picture of my garage, and half cut off in the corner is the elliptical machine. Okay? So take that, apply that to video, all the different frames, and so you'll be able to see and recognize all the different items, right? Because it's able to classify all those using recursive learning. Is anybody familiar, like just a raise of hands, who's familiar with the AlphaGo project and how Google DeepMind beat the largest Go player? Anyone? Wow, about 8 or 9 people. So quick segue, and then I'll move on. But so this is how quickly we're advancing. Go is the most complex game that we've created. It's people, 1,000,000 times more complex than chess. In fact, the computational moves in Go, there's more atoms, there's more computational moves than there are atoms in the Earth. It's that complex. And so Google DeepMind built an AI that ended up beating Lee Sedol, who is what they call a 9th Dan master in Go. He has won for the last 15 years in a row all these different championships. And anyways, that was a major turning point for AI. And what they did was they then put back, and they actually went to not recursive learning, but reinforcement learning. Rather than giving it examples and saying, hey, here's what you do, and now go do it, they just said, here's the general rules, find out your way and fail till you make it. That's what we should all do to some extent. But, and what they did with that is in 3 days, that new AI, AlphaGo 2, was beating the old version of AlphaGo. And in I think it was 3 weeks, it surpassed anything ever out there. So this is what we call more of a narrow AI. And we don't have to worry about that necessarily taking our jobs, but it'll be really good at doing these narrow tasks. It's where you get to the general AI that's doing that. So that's going to be the biggest disruptor in our time, using being able to process video, images, the world around us better, audio. And as it's able to do that, then it will move to being a better assistant for everything. Because in the future, search is not just me saying a query, but saying, what's that? And it's knowing that I'm pointing over at something, and it can visually see what it is, and it can give me all the information about that. That combined with AR and VR and a lot of the different things we're doing is where we're headed. So.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Doretta, what do you think the biggest shift or disruption would be over the next 12 months?
Right. So in our industry, and I'll take it more from a development standpoint of developing these products. In the past, and when I first started working in the industry, engineers had to do everything from scratch. Basically, you get there and you figure it out how to do everything custom from scratch. And these days, there's a lot more modules, and there's a lot more things that you can integrate so you can develop products faster. So in terms of our industry, and I'll point out Doug Harriman, who's our CTO, he's looking at what are those technologies that are already out there, what are those pieces, what are already pre-developed modules, and how can we take those and then customize those for individual products, and that way you can develop a product a lot faster, which is why you're seeing so many devices being designed faster. So we've internally written firmware that controls a 3D printer, for example. Some of that work was done as an internal project for us because we knew that that type of code could be leveraged across multiple projects. So looking at how do we have these types of modules that we can then develop products a lot faster and more efficiently for our clients, then that gives us a competitive edge. And so the part of developers now is how we work together, how we take the best, and I take very much a partnership approach to our business. So who's the best at which area? How do we put that together to deliver a product that's really faster time to market? Because that's what it's about. As technology changes, you can't take 2 years to develop a simple product. I mean, if it's a complex product, maybe still, but you're doing it faster and faster and faster. But you're doing that by leveraging other technologies that's out there. It's less siloed, it's a lot more collaborative, and it's a lot more cross-disciplinary.
Thank you, and Aaron?
So I think I like the idea of prediction. I think prediction will be a big part of the technology trends for the next 18 months. I'll bring it back to the topic of the conversation around the Internet of Things. I mean, what's going on right now is we're using some different methods, some of them manual and some of them automatic, basically to teach machines what they should do with us. And so, IoT devices are generating terabytes and terabytes of data. And what that data is doing is basically teaching machines what they should do. And so we have this artificial intelligence software that people are building. There's been a lot of investment over the last, I'd say, decade in artificial intelligence. And what it's basically doing is saying, okay, what should we do with all this data? People have been typing in search words. People have been telling us what they like. People have been helping us figure out what they want to share. We've been doing all this sort of gathering about what people want, what they do. And ultimately, where it's going is, it's teaching the machines, how should the supply chain of products and services really work. And so before I started Blockable, I spent 2 years at Amazon, and I worked on the build out of their first physical retail business. So I worked on the grocery store and the bookstore. And the reason Amazon is so good at delivering things, to your door before you know you need them is because it knows you, and then it has an incredible supply chain. And so that supply chain can push things to exactly where they need to go, but without the software that predicts what people want, it's useless. You can build this incredible supply chain with in-stock across the entire marketplace, but unless you know what someone wants, it's not very useful. So I think the biggest thing that'll happen over the next 18 months is just this increasingly efficient system of delivering products and services when and where they're needed. So as supply chains get better, as automation gets introduced, and as the machines get smarter to understand what it is that's needed, then products and services will be delivered when and where people need them. And then I apply that and look at it and say, well, how does that apply to housing? Because I think the same thing will happen in housing. Our business, what we're doing is essentially changing the supply chain of housing. So we can deliver housing to market much faster at a different price point because we use industrial construction. We build our product in a factory. Ultimately, what that'll mean is we want to really start to understand where and when is housing needed, and that's not really currently considered in the model. So if there's a change in the demographics of a certain area, that has an impact on housing. If there's a change, if there's a big group of graduates who suddenly hit the workforce, that's a change in housing. What happened in Silicon Valley is they're at least a decade late, reacting to a lot of fundamentals that started to be put in place 20 years ago there around how the whole industry changed. The amount of people working in tech, the amount of investment, influx of people. If you look at, I forget what the numbers are in Seattle, but it's something like, they've added 100,000 people to the population, and they've added something like, 7,500 new homes. So, I mean, at some point that breaks. And so it's because they're not related. There's no relationship between, the housing that we're building. It's very reactive. So I think in the next 18 months, I would definitely look at the application of artificial intelligence, the application of technology for the delivery of products and services when and where they're needed. For us in particular, that just means looking at all the various different inputs as to when and where housing is needed, and then building a supply chain that can deliver.
I have to tell you, so like 5 years ago, I told my son he was playing, what's that game with the blocks, Minecraft? Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, that's how houses are going to be built in the future. Just like that, you'll be building houses with your games and stuff like that. And that's what I told him the other day. I was like, see, I told you.
Great, thank you. So we want to move on now to the questions and answers from the audience, and we have probably 15 minutes or so, so we'll try to get through them as quick as we can. Thank you for generating these questions for our panelists today. I wanted to pick up on something that Aaron had mentioned. He talked about terabytes of data. You have to remember that with IoT, all these billions of devices are connecting to internet, and that requires a lot of pipe in the background. And so I want to thank the folks at the Port of Richfield who are, I think, here, Brent and Nelson, as they're bringing dark fiber to our community. And we have to understand that in the background, we still need a pipe, and a large pipe with gigabit speeds to transfer all these data that is being pinged by these billions of devices hitting the internet. So with that coming, I know that there's probably some government entities here in the audience. We have a question from the audience that states, what do you think that the local regional government can do to make your jobs better and more productive? So kind of a question for the folks in the room related to government.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I love about Vancouver is how active, well, not only the city, but the community as a whole. Last night I was at a group, 100 Men Who Care event, and there was, I know some of the people that are here were there, and it's just amazing to see the amount of people who care in the community. And the city of Vancouver has been really good, everything from creating the Innovation Partnership Zone to driving tech in the local community. But I really think that that's it, is just making it easier for businesses to do business and find the right people for the right positions in our area. And so that is working together with educational systems and businesses, which I see happening, and I think we need to continue that conversation and continue growing that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that they can do is help remove barriers to doing business and help just create more opportunities to educate and create jobs for our local people as things are changing. So.
Does anybody else want to answer that for local businesses and governments?
I mean, I've found the community here to be incredibly responsive. We have direct conversations with people at various levels of government. I mean, for us, we're building a housing product in a highly regulated market. Housing has contradictory regulations at the federal, state, and municipal level. So it's a complicated sort of landscape to navigate. And, I just generally encourage innovation around, in general, I think this area is well poised to support innovation across a number of different market sectors. And so investing in that innovation and taking risks is a requirement for developing new ideas.
Right, thank you. So now we have a question from the audience in regards to net neutrality, which has been a very hot topic. So the question is, does rollback of net neutrality impact your business or IoT in general? How does that impact?
Yeah, that's a tough one, I guess. Well, I don't know yet, because I guess we don't know how it will manifest at this point. So as people, so one thing is what I found, even myself, I consider myself somewhat technically astute, but you know, when it was going down, I didn't really quite understand it, and maybe I still don't quite understand it fully, but it's something along the lines of, you know, having preferential treatment basically to certain content, which will obviously allow companies that own more to do, you know, more pushing of their information out there, and the little guys will get kind of choked out. So I think it's fundamentally, in my opinion, and I didn't feel like I'm on political stage a little bit here, but in my opinion, I feel like it's kind of anti-capitalistic, and it's encouraging big monopolies to continue to stay in charge, where the little guys get pushed down and are not able to compete on a level playing field. And so will it affect? Absolutely, it will affect all of our industries and small businesses at large as they try to run up against these big giants. Now, of course, that's considering the big giants actually want to take advantage of the rules and actually apply the rules. A lot of them have said they won't do that, and in my heart, I hope that you know, it swings a bit and we get something a little bit more balanced. I mean, we want to allow for people to do whatever, but at the same time, it's so fundamental with the way we live right now that by having this uneven playing field could, I think, overall hurt the country and hurt business in America. So,
yeah, I think it's a bad idea to create a class system for data. Yep. It doesn't make any sense. And if we're saying that, you know, everybody should have access, if that's part of our message and we're talking about education, everybody should have access to technology and data, that goes against the notion of a class system for data. And if you look at our customers in general are going to have no advantage, no benefit, and so they'll be the lowest rung of, you know, people that the data providers are going to want to incentivize, and so I don't see how it benefits anybody we work with, and I think it's just in general, you know, it's a straightforward idea, but it's a bad idea to inspect data and decide who should pay for what.
Yeah, I'd agree that it's bad for small business, which that could potentially affect us. But I'm more along the same lines. Is like, this is one of the things I've always loved about the internet is the equality of access for information for everyone and education for everyone. You have this equal playing field, and now you are setting it up so that you can throttle speed connections and to specific types of content, different websites. And I think it's going to backfire. I think you're going to see a distributed web built on the blockchain that will be peer-to-peer based, that we won't have to worry about that type of thing. But you know, that's going to take time to happen. So I think it's not a good thing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be obvious immediately, but as you start to see it, you know, I worry about it. It's so nice that the internet is democracy. Because everyone can have access to everything. And I don't think it's going to be drastic or anything that we'll see personally immediately. It's just a question of what type of environment we're working to set up. So.
All right, our next question involves a topic of security. You know, I just read an article about self-driving semi-trucks, which I'm not ready for. But if everything is connected, won't everything be vulnerable? And should we just be terrified of who's going to stop my self-driving car if I can't?
Well, it already is, and it already has been. So I think we're way past that. I think the idea that, I mean, you know, the number of things that can be hacked in your home already is pretty high. So I mean, it should be a concern. It's a core concern, and it needs to be baked into everything that gets built. But you know, things are going to be built with technology access. And I think people maybe just aren't necessarily aware of how much can already be hacked. So
I don't know if anybody's aware of, anybody know how much of their actual flight time when they're flying is actually controlled by a human? It's a very small percentage.
Yeah.
A little bit in takeoff and a little bit in landing, and that will soon change. So, and that's been going on. That's actually been quite a while. That's been going on. So, I think that that it is a concern, and it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. I think overall we've seen that it's been safer in general, because as humans, we're not perfect either. So, we can be hacked, we can do stupid things.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a friend of mine who was in a car accident because the person behind him didn't stop. That technology is available that would force the car to stop when they're going 60 miles per hour and there's a stopped car. So yes, there's issues. Ultimately, driving is one of the most dangerous things we do. Flying's a lot safer because it's regulated and it's automated, and we've taken those safety precautions. So semi-trucks driving, there's mistakes that are made by humans, and yes, there will be a few mistakes that get made. I still think that overall, the amount of accidents will go down once the technology is proven and working and so forth.
I can't talk too much about this based on my job at Raytheon. So
I think the one thing you might
let it be known that you can hack just about everything. So if it has an antenna and a computer, it's vulnerable.
Okay, and I think we have time for maybe one last question from the audience. Obviously, we're excited that you guys are here building up your companies and in Clark County. So the question is, how is Vancouver and Clark County uniquely positioned to attract more companies like yours? Because we want this economy to grow here.
Well, I'll go back to sort of my passionate love affair here that I said why I got here in the first place. But to us at RealWear, our whole culture, it starts with being recognized as someone valuable in the community, and that's I think a fundamental need for people to be happy is to feel appreciated and feel like you have some sort of a place. And a lot of these larger, more expensive areas, you get kind of washed out and you don't feel like you're appreciated. And I just, this audience today and the responsiveness and the energy that I feel is just amazing, and it makes us all up here on stage feel very appreciated. And I think that culture and that community and continuing to cultivate that and participate, because it's a participatory thing. I have to now do my part, that you've done your part to recruit us here now as a leader of a business in the community. I have to do my part to give back to new businesses coming in, and recently I joined the recruitment committee on CREDC in order to try to aid in that endeavor. And so each of us have a role that we can play to build a more and more vibrant boom phase of Vancouver. And I'm looking forward to hopefully holding my part of the mantle to try to get us a very vibrant and a very dynamic city here, because I think it's a wonderful city, and it really, really deserves such a great sort of uptick on the world stage even.
Nicely said. Any last comments?
Yeah, so what's interesting is our company has 4 locations. So we're here in Vancouver, over in Fisher's Landing by the tech center. But we also have San Diego, and then recently we opened Bay Area and Seattle over the last few years. And so it's interesting to compare the different geographies, and we have these local presence because we're developing hardware, and a lot of our clients want to be close to where the hardware is, where a lot of it is a partnership and a collaboration. And the people that we're able to recruit to our Vancouver office, it is the people who want that quality of life and want to be able to afford a house, like the outdoors. So those pieces of it, I think, are equally important in terms of the talent. We do have some transplants from the Bay Area, from like Texas and so forth, that we've been able to attract here. So there is a a quality of life that I think draws people to this area. At the same time, we do need to get our educational system up to the level where we can hire the types of engineers that we need, because we need some very high-level talented engineers. So working together with that system to homegrown talent, as well as we have people that have gone to the local universities, both in Portland and in Washington, and then also some that are from out of the area.
I was just going to add to that. I think when my wife and I moved here about 12 years ago, the educational system was definitely something that attracted us. We had kids at school age that were going to go into school, and having an amazing educational system was a big thing. The environment in general, knowing that I can travel one exit down and be at Economist Lake, running around, jogging in this beautiful paradise type environment, is just that. But as I started living here, I really, before we came, like many people, I had the Vantucky idea of Vancouver, and I think now I've been here for a while, I've fallen in love, and it's the Couve to me, because it is this growing, amazing thing that we have, building the waterfront, and I think between the CRDC and the Chamber, we have so much opportunity to help pull in new businesses. We have a business-friendly environment to create more jobs, and at the end of the day, the thing that I love most about this local community is the people. We have the most amazing people that I've ever had the pleasure of being around. So thank you so much for being part of the community.
Well, thank you. Did you have any?
I'd just say that I think that one is to just tell the story. I mean, it's a really great story here, and I think it's probably just not told. A lot of people are working on it, and I think that there's two parts. One is, I mean, Vancouver itself is an amazing place, which you can tell that story, but it's also in context of the region, because Vancouver is part of a really vibrant area all the way from Vancouver, BC, to Seattle, Portland, San Francisco. The whole region is really central to why Vancouver can prosper, right? Because Vancouver is in context of the entire region. So Vancouver's place in the region, I think, is also a really important part of the story, because this is an incredible region where there's going to be a lot of growth and activity, and it's all the stories that we're talking about up here today. But the context between Vancouver's unique livability and all the assets that we have here in context of the region, I think is really important.
Yeah, I also like to add that the waterfront project's very exciting too. So that's going to be a great thing to recruit other businesses, and especially out of the town companies. So.
And for someone who grew up in Chicago, your weather is not bad, so quit saying that.
All right, well, that's all the time that we have today, and I want everyone to give the panelists a big hand and thank them for their time and insights. Jody?
Exit stage left.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I learned a lot of new things today. I think my husband's not going to be happy to hear that Amazon's just going to be delivering packages to our house that I haven't even ordered. Well, right now I'd like to introduce Scott Bailey. But first, I want to thank the panelists again and May. That was just amazing. Really enjoyed it. Thanks. Good job. Okay, so Scott Bailey has served as the regional economist for the Washington State Employment Security Department, covering Southwest Washington for 28 years. He's our local source for labor market information for the region, tracking unemployment, industry trends, the occupational outlook, and wages and income. Scott has done extensive research on wages statewide and is currently collaborating with a team from the University of Washington to assess the economic and social impacts of the $15 minimum wage. Scott received his master's degree in economics from Portland State University. He's a board member of the Pacific Northwest Regional Economic Conference. Scott also teaches economics at Clark College. And last year, he was elected to the Portland Public Schools Board of Directors. Let's welcome Scott.
Thank you again to the sponsors. Thanks for inviting me here again. Thanks for an incredible panel. So this is actually my older son is 28 years old, so I go, okay, this is my 29th year here. And Kim, this is for you. I have never been so confident about where the economy is going as I am right now. And a lot of it has to do with all the wonderful technology that's coming on board. And, excuse me, I'm sorry, this is really, this will just take a second, it's my broker. Hey, Alexa, sell all my stocks and bonds. No, stocks, not socks. Dorota, I thought you said we had this voice thing. Alexa, buy guns and ammo. She got me a great deal on some Uzis. Alexa, buy dehydrated food and water. Yeah, RA is great. Alexa, with everything else, buy Ripple. Not Bitcoin. No. The wine. The wine, yeah. Okay, good, thanks. So where was I? Oh yeah, like I said, I'm incredibly confident about where the economy is going right now. Let's see. Do we have slides going with this guy? How's this work? So last year, I don't know how this is, how's this working? Or are we working? We don't know what we're doing here. I love technology. We'll figure it out. We'll figure this out in a minute, and if not, I'll fake it. Last year, economists never talk about the predictions unless they happened to luck out and be right. Last year, I said I thought we were headed for about 3% employment growth, which is really pretty good, except for we had a new casino, so I bumped it up to close to 4%, and that's where we've landed this year. And this is about 4 years in a row we've had 3 or 4% employment growth. That's very strong. Our unemployment is low nationally, it's low statewide, it's low Portland metro area, it's low in Clark County. That's really good news. So 2 for 2. Slides, yes. Now if I can hit the right. Okay, so there's all our, and this is going to be, I can't remember what the slides are, so I'm going to be kind of going like this a little bit. Really low unemployment, that's really good. Job growth, again, that's about the 4th year in a row. We've been very close to 4%, very strong growth. If you look at historically where we've come from in comparison, so that's the US. We lost about 6% of our employment base in the recession, and we've come back to, it's about 6% above where we were. State of Washington looks a lot like that, except you see where Boeing initially took off, and then Amazon took over. Portland Metro looks a lot like that, and Clark County is doing even way better in terms of job growth. Yeah, so that's really good news. And again, there's no such thing as a state economy. There are regional economies. There are a number of counties in the state of Washington that are still at that minus 10% mark, where there's been no recovery. Yeah, Grace Harbor, Clallam County, a number of the eastern Washington counties. You go around to the rest of the country, you can see how we compare nationally. Again, there's no national economy, there's regional economies. There's a lot of areas that are still hurting job-wise. So we are really lucky to be here. This is job growth by industry. We lost a ton of construction jobs and a lot of manufacturing jobs in the recession. We're finally back and a little bit ahead of where we are construction-wise, and we're about where we were manufacturing jobs. And as Aaron talked about productivity growth in manufacturing, so the fact that we're where we are job-wise 10 years later, when productivity would, if we had stood still, would lower our employment by 10 or 20% in manufacturing, that means we're actually standing still with employment and manufacturing is actually doing really well. And of course, we have a lot more healthcare jobs because people like me are getting old. And if it's not my knees this week, it'll be something else next week. We do have a growing wage gap. So this looks at, if you imagine taking all the jobs and what's the average wage for the lowest paid 10% of jobs, that's on the left. The average wage for the highest paid 10% of jobs is on the right, and everything in the middle. You see that wage growth has been much faster on the upper end. Yeah, okay. Can I wander around with this thing? There we go. I hope this helps. The good news, we've had a really good recovery in median family income, so that's our household income. So the income at which half of households have less than that, half have more. Big increases over the last couple of years. We look a lot like the state of Washington. Again, we're comparing that with Seattle. We're much better and a better recovery than the nation, which is still below where it was before the recession. So again, more good news. Those of you who've been around for a while, you know what my nickname is. It's Dr. Doom. This is really painful to show all this good news up here. Income's up means people are spending more. We had almost a 20% drop in retail sales in the recession. Ouch! And we've had quite a good, took a couple of years, but quite a good recovery. But if you look at, drill down with incomes, again, a growing gap. And this is what's been happening for, well, you go back to the late 60s, mid 70s with this, again, most of the gains in the country accruing to the top 1%. And it's happening here as well. Looking at housing, single family construction is not where it is historically. In fact, it looks like it might even be down a little bit this year compared with the last year, and you wouldn't think that based on the need, as Aaron talked about. Multifamily, we've had, in terms of permits issued this year, pretty good gain. But again, what market is that multifamily hitting? And really almost everywhere in the country, certainly throughout the Northwest, we are not building affordable homes for families. And that's, I really admire what Aaron's doing. That's a great niche, but that's not a family niche. And that's a huge issue, as we'll get to in a little bit. One way of measuring that is looking at what percent of your income goes to paying rent, if you're a renter, which is over a third of our households. The federal government says if you're paying more than 30% of your income in rent, you're getting squeezed. There's kind of some necessities that you're not getting to. Well, half of our renters are in that boat. And this is, again, despite really good income growth, that number really hasn't budged much. And if you look at really distressed, 20% of our renters are paying half of their income or more in rent. This is the technical term for this in economics is this market is broken. And what we need when a market is broken is some innovation and government action. And it's not going to come from the feds. Where's that going to come from? How does this trickle down? Our last statistic, 1 in 25. If you take the average classroom in Clark County in a school, it's roughly 25 kids. One of those kids, on average, is homeless. So think about all the things the panelists were saying about the importance of education, and every business panel we've had over the last 28 years has talked about the importance of education. How effective do you think our teachers can be with a kid whose family is in a shelter or living in a motel this week or in the car or wherever. Again, that's 4% of our future workforce. And that's just the tip. So on that cheery note, again, a lot of things. When I was on a panel Tuesday with, God, I love getting old, our state forecaster, Steve, it'll come to me in 5 minutes. Is Eric Fuller here? God, what's Steve's last name? Okay, anyway, his view of what's going on nationally and statewide is positive, no clouds on the horizon, there's no like flashing warning lights about anything going on. Looks to be what we've had before, pretty solid growth, and the state doing somewhat better than the nation. Tight labor market, low inflation, still lower than what the Federal Reserve Bank wants. We'll probably see some very small bump ups in interest rates that the Fed is going to do this year. 3 is the consensus pick. But we're at really, really low interest. So is that going to mess anything up? Probably have very little impact. World economic growth, the predictions are pretty rosy. So overall, this looks like a pretty good year going forward, and that bodes well for the county. So I'm guessing we get about 3% employment growth, which is really, this is we're in our 8th year of a recovery. So to be 8 years out and still to be growing like that, and still to see no huge inflation going, that looks pretty good. Will we get the wage growth that people really need? I don't know about that. But in terms of a lot of the other indicators, things are certainly improving and look to continue to do so in 2018. Thanks.
Okay. I guess we can't, since we can't call you Dr. Doom anymore, we need to come up with a new name, but thanks. We never know what Scott's going to say, but it's always entertaining. So thank you all for joining us this morning. Remember to take the goodies at the table from all of our sponsors. And be sure to watch the rebroadcast of this morning's program on CVTV. One last thing I'd like to do. Today's event wouldn't have been possible without the help of these fine folks, so I'd like to thank them. Our fantastic staff at the Columbian who helped us set up and greet. Rona Senhas, who's our events coordinator. Audrey Bomar and Angie Gross from the Hilton here and her team. Thank you all for attending and have a great day. And hopefully we'll see you next year. Thanks.